What you doing?
I'm just watching some Lost in Space.
Huh. Created by Irwin Allen. You ever do anything else?
It's funny you should ask. I should not be sitting on my foot. That makes me taller. Welcome back to Faith on Film, where we read your church library and search for the good stuff. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Nathan. And today the Master of Disaster has dropped a bomb in our laps. Irwin Allen earned that nickname from producing such disaster films as The Towering Inferno or The Poseidon Adventure, and yes, the cult sci-fi series Lost in Space. Today, however, we're looking at one of his earliest works, 1957's The Story of Mankind. It was his first venture into non-documentary movies, and he chose to base it on a non-fiction book of the same name. That book was a history of the world, zooming in on things that the author felt were significant. And that's about it. The movie had an entirely other purpose.
Now, having watched Lost in Space as a kid, I knew that it could be serious sometimes, but it was also very campy and hokey. So I expected that this movie would be something like that. Serious a little bit, but also kind of campy and hokey. I think we both knew that this was going to be more of a B movie going in, but boy, what a heck of an A-list cast.
As the credits roll by, you see the names of Vincent Price, Hedy Lamarr, the Marx Brothers, Ronald Colman, Virginia Mayo, Agnes Moorehead, Peter Lorre, Charles Corburn, Cesar Romero, Cedric Hardwicke, John Carradine, Dennis Hopper. And that's just to name a few. So it got me wondering, if this movie has so many big names, why is it so little remembered? Surely even if it sucks, it should be an interesting footnote for that accomplishment.
Yeah, just getting all these big names together.
Right.
People asked Ronald Colman if this movie was based on the book, and he said, yes, but they are only using the notes from the dust jacket. Pretty apt description, as you mentioned, the book in question is a history book. This one has a plot.
Wait, who adapts a history book and says it needs more storyline?
No. It's so all these big name actors are playing all these historical figures.
Okay.
But the driving narrative is mankind being on trial in outer space. And the devil is the prosecutor. He's played by Vincent Price. Mankind has discovered the Super H-bomb 60 years ahead of schedule. So all of the heavens have been summoned. The Great Tribunal of Outer Space has been summoned to see whether mankind is worth being saved from itself.
I have so many questions already.
They will not be answered. And Ronald Colman is here. He is the spirit of all mankind, because Adam was inconvenienced. And he is going to be our defense.
Never defend yourself. That's an excellent way to lose your case. Wait, hold up. Who's the judge? It's God, right? It must be God.
I gotta be honest, I have no freaking clue. This movie is bizarrely vague on whether or not God exists in this universe. The judge here is never explicitly identified as anything other than the judge. Meanwhile, one of the earliest scenes in this movie is God appearing to Moses on Mount Sinai.
You're right. That is confusing. Does the judge work for God? Does God work for the judge? Are they independent operations? Was God the judge's predecessor? Or maybe God is simply the judge's way of manifesting his way to mankind? Or maybe Moses was imagining...
Nathan, you're getting sidetracked.
I have so many questions.
And I already told you, they will not be answered. So the majority of our plot is the devil and the spirit of mankind moseying throughout all the periods of history. And this is where our all-star cast comes in, playing these many historical figures.
From the cruelty, barbarity, creativity, and sense of community that the cavemen displayed, to the builder of the Great Pyramid of Giza, Khufu. The devil says that he made Khufu a deal for immortality in exchange for millions of souls. Oh, good. We're already directly involving Satan in world history. This can only end well.
Now, what I find strange is Khufu is directly brought to the witness stand to testify, but he's kind of the only one. Nobody else comes up to the witness stand. They're just seen in their historical context. So, what in the heck makes Khufu special?
The spirit's counterexample to Khufu is Moses, because they were both in positions of power in Egypt, but Moses opted to lead the Hebrews out of bondage. That's because he went out to live in the desert and there found a new and more dignified God. I really want to read that as an allusion to higher textual criticism and the Kenite hypothesis, but I'm afraid I'd be giving this movie more credit than it deserves.
Oh, yes. And here we are, God giving Moses the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai. Without the tablets. That is minorly disappointing, given that a certain movie had come out the year before.
He's working on it, okay? This sets up the devil to perfectly say, oh, the Ten Commandments? What about all that killing that happened in the Trojan War over a woman? The Trojan War is a little more complicated than, hey, look, pretty lady.
You'll find that most of the history in this movie has been simplified.
Yeah. Like how the spirit's response to the Trojan War is, yes, but Greece also produced philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle.
Morons. To which I would have to say, so what?
He also cites Hippocrates and how great it was that he didn't look for answers by sacrificing bulls to appease the gods, but instead looked for natural explanations to illnesses. Movie. You've already repeatedly told me that the Great Pyramid of Giza was the result of a literal deal with the devil. Pot? Kettle?
But enough about ancient Greece. Let's move on to Rome.
Yes. The devil then talks about Cleopatra, Julius Caesar, and Mark Antony and how they all played each other for political advancement. Mark Antony bemoans to Cleopatra, I was the greatest of all Romans, but what am I now?
And we're not exaggerating, by the way. He really does deliver the line like that. It's hilarious.
And then it's time for Nero.
Yes.
Nero is throwing a lavish party, and at first you think, okay, I can see how the moral guardians of the 50s would object to this, but it doesn't seem so bad. Then he pulls open a curtain to reveal that the fire of Rome has been going on this entire time. That's surprisingly good drama.
Hey, if Moses is in this movie, shouldn't the early church be floating around here? Oh, there it is.
Why, yes, the spirit's counter-argument to Nero's tyranny is the hope of the early church. This is probably his best argument so far. After all, hope of things getting better is the motivating factor for people to do good things, and it is indeed the thing that topples tyrannies in the first place. Hope is a very good thing. Rebellions are built on hope and all that.
You know, I was going to go with the Shawshank Redemption, but Rockland works too. With the spirit of man citing faith as such a beautiful thing, the devil could easily counter with the horrible things that state religions have done once they became the dominating power and not a minority. Like the Spanish Inquisition, not this time. But no, Attila the Hun. He's the one who started the Dark Ages. Attila the Hun.
Whoa. Attila the Hun sparked the Dark Ages.
According to this movie, yes.
Okay, lot to unpack there. First of all, the Dark Ages are not really dark in the way that people think of them. They're dark in the sense of modern historians that have precious few written records of that era. So they are dark to us. It's the same reason that futurologists project that our current era would become the internet dark age if the internet itself ever went away. Second of all, Attila the Hun? Really? Like, okay, he created some political instability in the Western Roman Empire, but he's hardly the primary reason that it fell. For that, you'd have to look to wars with the Germanic tribes, the spread of disease being spread out too thin, the rise of Christianity, and
Nathan, you're rambling again.
If the movie would stop being wrong, I wouldn't have to.
And again, we're just getting started. So, about those Crusades. In a bizarre twist, actually the spirit of mankind who brings up the Crusades, not the devil. In fact, he says this: a strange creature, man, still fighting and dying for his faith, whether the deity be the Judaic God, the Holy Trinity, the Great Enlightenment, as preached by the prophet Buddha, or Allah, whose prophet was Muhammad.
Hold on.
Yeah, you heard that correctly.
I'm sorry. Yes, the Crusades were fought in the name of faith.
Against each other. That's kind of a major detail to leave out.
Also, Nirvana is not a deity. The Buddha is not a prophet. And I'm confused about what the spirit of mankind's point is. People have faith in things? It doesn't seem to matter which thing. Just any old thing will do. As long as your faith motivates you, it's fine.
This makes the scene with Moses even more confusing. Is the idea here that if the spirit of man seems to be saying that all faiths are equal, that's all well and good, except Yahweh was in this movie a few minutes ago. Either way, it seems like this topic should be the devil's argument, a strike against mankind, not the spirit of man's. And say the devil does bring this up, the spirit of man could retort with the story of St. Francis and the Sultan Al-Kamil or something. But no, we're not doing that.
Regardless, it's time for Joan of Arc with the Lord to guide her. She was a sister who really cooked.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, take it up with classic sitcom Maude, not me.
Oddly enough, Joan of Arc is the thing that both the spirit of man and the devil feel support their case. The spirit of man cites Joan as a source of inspiration because her humble faith led her to do great things, to which the devil says that she's an example of how those in power can use faith to persecute perfectly good, sweet, and innocent people. Oh, now we're bringing this up. Okay, sure.
Joan's communion with Michael is portrayed a bit weirdly.
Mm-hmm.
Attack by the Orleans and you can win.
We can win by attacking. Attack! Wow, look at you go, you amazing strategist. You usually do win by attacking.
Okay, I get it that the people around her can't hear the Archangel, but did we really need her being Gwen DeMarco?
Look, I have one job on this lousy ship. It's stupid, but I'm gonna do it, okay?
What sucks is Hedy Lamarr was an icon in her own right. She was not only an actress, she was also an inventor. In fact, during the Second World War, she worked with composer George and Teal, and together they developed a guidance system for Allied torpedoes. In other words, Hedy Lamarr as Joan of Arc should be amazing. Okay, I'm done now.
But she's used so poorly here. In fact, a lot of these otherwise talented actors are not played to their strengths. Really, those who are playing, the only ones who are playing into type are the Marx Brothers. But
we'll get to the Marx Brothers later. Right now, we're still in the Middle Ages.
Right, where Joan of Arc is being burned at the stake by the government. Hey, I just realized, all the bad people have been the heads of government.
Nathan, are you okay?
Oh, I've decided that government is just a mob rule that's socially accepted.
Oh, brother.
Come and see the violence inherent in the system.
Are you done?
You want to see what I found in an anarcho-pacifist website? It'll open your eyes.
I'll pass. So the spirit of man then goes on to say that at the same time that Joan was killed, the Renaissance was...
No. Gonna stop you right there. There was around a century between the death of Joan of Arc and what could properly be considered the start of the Renaissance. And even so, the Renaissance wasn't really a thing that people would have noticed at the time. It was really more in hindsight that historians went, there was a lot of innovation in the arts around this time period.
Is the spirit of mankind's answer for everything, look at the pretty art?
Why, yes it is. In fact, he cites one of the great contributors, Dante. Dante.
Oh.
It's Dante, you uncultured swine. I ought to slug you.
Dante's Inferno. That's got quite a ring to it. What else has he got for me?
Well, he stops in to show the devil one of the great leaders of the Renaissance, a man whom the masses would follow willingly.
Ooh, Nicholas Copernicus? Galileo?
Mamma mia, let me go. No, Leonardo da Vinci.
What?
Yes. He shows the devil the Mona Lisa, a pretty poor recreation of the Mona Lisa, I might add, as if to say, could humanity be so bad if it produced this?
Okay, Da Vinci? Really? He was a great artist, but it's not like he was a world leader or something who started a revolution. He painted some beautiful paintings and drew some very interesting sketches.
He also helped Daniela get to the ball, don't forget that.
Okay, sure.
And then there's Christopher Columbus. Surely this is the devil's witness, right?
Oh no, the spirit of mankind presents him as the innovator who realized that the world was round. And it was only after his time that all the slavery and all that ugly stuff happened. Grandfather Claus, Grandfather Claus!
Fine. Link to the History Buffs review of 1492 Conquest of Paradise. We do not have time to go into all the ways that this is wrong.
Interestingly enough, the devil does counter-argue with the evils that imperialism did bring and how it screwed over native populations. And no joke, I actually have to give this movie some credit for that one. I'm very surprised that a movie from this era would even touch on that. So, good job.
Boy, how's the spirit of mankind going to get himself out of this one?
Shakespeare.
What?
Yes, his answer for everything is art.
He presents a scene where Elizabeth I is threatened by Spanish invasion, and Shakespeare quotes her part of his upcoming play, The Taming of the Shrew, and that inspires her to fight back.
Nope, wrong again.
The incident with the Spanish Armada was in 1588. The earliest estimated date for the writing of The Taming of the Shrew was 1590, because that's when it's believed that Shakespeare first arrived in London. How do you mess that up? I'm at least glad that the spirit is implying that art is a good thing because it inspires people. Because, as we all know, Shakespeare has never, ever, ever been quoted to support a bad thing.
Screw your courage to the sticking place. We're counting on your star to lead the way.
Look, if you want to counter the evils of mankind with great writers, wouldn't more socially conscious writers make more sense? You know, the likes of Thomas Paine or Charles Dickens or Victor Hugo or Jonathan Swift.
That's not the book.
It was in the bargain bin. I couldn't help myself.
Shakespeare was many things, but he primarily wrote for a paycheck. But if you were hell-bent on using him anyway, wouldn't you go with, like, his what a piece of work is man speech from Hamlet? And the spirit can leave it off at the paragon of animals, only for the devil to pick up with, but man delights not me, allowing him to transition into his next witness, Peter Minuit, and his treatment of the Native Americans. This is where we get the Marx Brothers.
Any credit I gave this movie earlier for how it handled this particular subject is going out the window right now. The Marx Brothers? Really?
Well, only one of them. Groucho is here as Peter, and he is scamming the Lenape people out of what would eventually become New York.
Okay, if you're going to use the Marx Brothers, wouldn't playing this bit up more as a satire make a little more sense? But no, it's really just a bunch of anachronistic jokes, mostly at the expense of what an idiot the chief was. That's not a good look. The other thing that's funny is this is really tonally jarring. Up until this point, all these historical scenes were played for drama. But this is played for...
Agnes Moorehead's atrocious overacting notwithstanding.
True. That was some hilariously bad overacting. But here it is straight comedy. And this tone comes out of nowhere and disappears just as quickly. But at least they dropped the laugh track from earlier. Oh yeah, this movie had a laugh track in the first 15 minutes that disappeared after a while, thank goodness. I don't know whose idea that was.
So the devil skims his way through the Salem witch trials, the plague, the Great Fire of London, and piracy.
And the spirit of mankind's counter-argument to this is Isaac Newton, played by Harpo Marx. We are back to comedy just like that. Look, I enjoy Harpo Marx, but A, this bit really isn't that funny, and B, it's totally jarring. Your scene just a few minutes ago was pirates killing people, and now here's Harpo Marx.
In case you're wondering why the battle scenes look so much better than everything else, it's because they're stock footage from other Warner Brothers owned movies. The new footage is shot on small sound stages with tight close-ups, and it's laid on top of other movies to make it look grander.
The Spirit of Man also goes on to rattle off some of the great composers like Mozart and Beethoven. You gotta stop it with the art thing. Look, I love Beethoven just as much as the next person, but in the grand scheme of world history, his accomplishments aren't that important.
What do you mean Beethoven wasn't so great?
And then it's time for the American Revolution. Now, of course, the Spirit of Man fails to mention the whole should we keep our slaves thing, which was such a hot button issue, choosing instead to focus on the wonderfulness of this revolution.
Molasses to rum to slaves who sail the ships back to Boston.
No, the devil's the one to bring up slavery.
Because of course he is. Why does the devil keep making better arguments? Mankind, you suck at your job.
Well, obviously, as an American production, this movie will not have the institution of our great nation besmirched by such foul and false accusations. Wait a minute. I've been wrong. It's not just people in government who oppress others. It's anyone in a higher class. The history of all nations hitherto is the history of class struggles.
Aw, that's making me so proud.
The proletariat have nothing to lose but their chains. This revolutionary fervor kicks off in France, and they get rid of that silly Marie Antoinette.
But Napoleon...
I don't need any of your facts.
The Spirit of Mankind talks about how mankind rose up and put Napoleon into exile, to which the devil then, of course, counters that wars continued on, all over the world, regardless.
Including the American Civil War.
Yes.
Because, of course, the only things that are important to this movie are the things that affected America. Well, I would include some Russian history, but have you ever tried keeping that straight?
And here is where the Spirit of Man brings up the Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation.
Yes. Never mind that was a strategic act of war. Never mind that the Confederacy wouldn't give up until the place was burnt to the ground. Never mind the Reconstruction era and the continued impoverishment of...
Nathan? You're rambling again.
Cast off your chains, oppressed workers. We'll buy from the bourgeoisie the very ropes that we'll use to hang...
Take that off it, sir. The Spirit of Mankind then cites all the wonderful advancements in technology. He's upgrading. Now technology fixes everything. To which, of course, the devil then points out that all this new technology is often used against mankind. Once again, this is also a good point. So the devil cites World War I in particular. And it is true, half of why that war was so devastating is the tactics from the previous war did not match the technology of the new wars.
The devil then talks about how people sought comfort in music and other forms of art and allowed themselves to get distracted from the real world, including the rise of Adolf Hitler. Ah, I too have seen Cabaret.
You still think you can control them?
Yes, Moses and Hitler are in the same movie. Now, this actor ended up having quite a career playing the part of Hitler, and I can see why. He really looks the part. It's minorly unsettling. But no Holocaust here, which is probably for the best in a B movie that might have gotten pretty ugly. No, the devil's just sticking to the bare bones of the war. Oh boy, what political affiliation are you now?
I gave up. It's just, there's no point in things getting better, so why even try?
Whatever happened to giving a crap?
It's just so tiring. I can't do it anymore.
Oh, okay.
So then it's time for closing arguments.
This is the part where the spirit of man brings out his final witness.
Wait, closing arguments are not the time to bring out further witnesses.
Nathan, don't try to tell this movie how courtrooms work. They don't know any better. Anyway, the final witness is the man of tomorrow. No, not you. Though that would be awesome. No, instead it's a small child. And the spirit of man makes an impassioned plea to please let there be a tomorrow.
He goes on to say, because if there is no tomorrow, then all of our acts of goodness will have meant nothing. Well, so much for goodness being its own reward.
And then the devil shows the court that the toys that the man of tomorrow is playing with are a toy gun and sword. Oh, snap. How are we going to talk our way out of this one, spirit of mankind?
It's simple, really, very clear. You see, the spirit of mankind reveals that the toy sword is really just a pencil box, and the toy gun shoots nothing but music.
What?
Music gun?
Boy, art really is the spirit of mankind's answer for everything.
Because it's not like art has ever been caused by atrocities, inspired atrocities, co-opted after the fact to support atrocities, or itself been an atrocity. And like the devil pointed out earlier, it's not like people have ever focused way too much on art to the exclusion of the real world. I'm sure there are people who know way more about the obscure backstories in Star Wars than they do about their own national news and culture and history.
And just the silliness of, oh no, it's not a real gun, it plays music. I want to know how Ronald Colman got through saying that with a straight face.
I was expecting him to say something like, oh, the child plays with the weapon so that it might learn from the errors of its ancestors and not repeat them.
Or maybe the child looks at the toys, loses interest, and then goes to do something else. Anything. But no, music. I'm sorry, that's just so silly.
The High Tribunal then announces that the Super H-bomb will go off at 11 o'clock, as indicated on the Great Clock of Outer Space. Great Clock of... That's even more absurd.
Why are they introducing this clock at the 11th hour?
What time zone does space operate on?
I don't know. Oh.
And another thing, if the H-bomb is scheduled to be introduced 60 years from now, that implies that mankind will be progressive enough at that point to know what to do with it, i.e. not to detonate it. So, doesn't that presuppose that you should just stop the bomb now and let them progress 60 years? Why are we having this trial in the first place?
I don't know. Ooh, maybe in the future it will be a musical Super H-bomb. Oh my goodness.
So the High Tribunal announces their decision that the evil and good of mankind are too evenly weighed.
So they're not going to grant mankind eternal life, but they're not going to intervene and let them be destroyed either. They're going to take a recess and see what happens.
Eternal life was never on the table.
Oh, no. See, Khufu mentioned that the devil promised him immortality with the pyramid. That totally counts as
No. That was not something the Tribunal was going to grant all of mankind. That was all the devil's work.
Oh, yeah.
No. The options were always stop the bomb or drop the bomb. By taking a recess and giving mankind more time to either progress or decay, morally, you're saying you're stopping the bomb, which means you found the spirit of mankind's case more persuasive. Somehow.
I don't know. I feel like Irwin Allen was trying to be Rod Serling and Cecil B. DeMille at the same time, but didn't really know how to do either.
Ultimately, the spirit of mankind absolutely sucks at his job. Where the devil is able to counter every good thing with, yes, but it led to so much bad, all of the spirit's points are complete non sequiturs. If you wanted to build a proper case for optimism, you needed to focus way more on that sense of hope that you brought up for like 2 minutes before you forgot about it to talk more about art. Hope is the reason that people do good things in the first place. Hope is the hope that things can get better, not will, can get better. It's like in the great stories, Miss Stephanie.
What?
The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were.
No, we are not doing this.
But sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy when so much...
Now, theologically speaking, mankind is fallen and is not inherently good in the first place, and this is why repentance is necessary. Now, a B-movie can't really get into something that heavy, I suppose, but the more I think about it, why didn't the spirit of mankind counter with stories of repentance? Instead of focusing on how wonderful art is, why didn't he counter with true stories of mercy, of forgiveness, of compassion? These are things that would have made his argument so much more compelling and... Hold on a minute.
Because they were holding on to something.
What are we holding on to, Nathan?
That there's some good in this world. And it's worth fighting for.
Are you done?
I believe I am, yes.
Then you may come back inside.
Ooh. All in all, the spirit needed to focus more on little people. He spent way too much time focusing on big famous people, but anonymous folks throughout history the world over have been important too. Like, show people letting others go on the lifeboats instead of them on the Titanic. Show parents starving so they can feed their children. Show monks taking in strangers and feeding them during the Middle Ages. Show Christians opening their gates for Muslims and vice versa. Show people hiding Jews in their homes from the Gestapo. Stuff like this is how you show that there's hope for mankind yet. Not, but look at the Mona Lisa and Christopher Columbus.
So, what's the rating you're going to give this thing?
I'm giving it a hearty meh.
Yeah.
It's an odd little curiosity, but it doesn't live up to its lofty ambitions in practically any way.
No.
Vincent Price is a class act, though, and you can tell he's having a blast. It's almost worth checking out the movie just to see his performance. So, have you had your revenge yet?
Huh?
Your revenge for the Judas Project. This was it, right?
Oh, no. I have something much better in mind. Thank you for joining us for Faith on Film. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm scared. See you next time.